Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how the world expects men to break the silence first? She pulls away, withdraws her warmth, and suddenly the weight of repair falls on your shoulders. You're the one expected to reach out, to check in, to apologize, Abin, when your only crime was showing up with good intentions. Society doesn't question it. It just quietly assumes that if there's a disconnect, the man must be the one to fix it. You're seen as emotionally unavailable if you don't chase, cold if you go silent, and immature if you choose to protect your peace. But what happens when you stop playing that role? What happens when, instead of explaining your worth more time, you choose stillness not as a game, but as a boundary? That silence becomes a mirror. And that mirror doesn't just show her your absence, it shows her the truth. She's been avoiding. She begins to see the parts of the relationship she never had to take responsibility for. The times you forgave what shouldn't have been normalized. The emotional weight you carried just to keep things steady. Your silence unmasks the illusion of control. Because for so long, she believed, maybe not maliciously, but subconsciously, that if she distanced herself, you'd bridge the gap. That your love was guaranteed, that your effort was eternal. Maybe it was. Maybe you did chase before. Maybe you proved your loyalty so many times, she forgot it wasn't owed. But now, your silence speaks louder than any declaration of love. It says, I will not run after someone who treats my consistency like a safety net. That alone shatters the old dynamic, because now she feels the shift. The upper hand she thought she had, gone. And in its place, a quiet realization she wasn't holding this together. You were asterisk. Her ego doesn't know what to do with your silence. It confuses her, disrupts the rhythm she was comfortable with. She expected you to break first, to reach out, to fold under the weight of her withdrawal, like you always did before. Because in her mind, she was the center of gravity, and you were the orbit. She knew how this played out. She pulls away and you chase. She gives less, and you give more. It was a pattern, one she never had to question because you made it easy not to. But now, your silence breaks that narrative. It forces her to look inward instead of outward. And that's a space she's not used to navigating. She starts to question what she never had to before. Did you move on? Have you finally seen her clearly? Was she not enough after all? Silence creates an unfamiliar sound. Tension. Not the dramatic kind she used to spark, with emotional distance, but the still, unnerving kind. The kind that can't be dismissed with distraction or attention from others. And that tension makes her uncomfortable because it's no longer about her power over you, it's about her lack of power within herself. When you stop responding, stop showing up for the same dance, she's left dancing alone. And without an audience, that performance loses meaning. The truth is, her ego was fed by your reaction. Even your frustration, your need for clarity, validated her significance in your life. But now you've given her nothing to react to, no energy to feed on. That silence becomes a void, a space she can't control or predict. And in that space, her image of herself in your world begins to collapse. You're not playing the role she wrote for you. You're rewriting the script. She doesn't know how it ends anymore. Asterisk, there's something sacred about the moment. You choose not to react. Not because you've become numb, not because you don't care, but because you've finally realized that begging for love is a form of self-abandonment. You see, every time you reached out after being mistreated, every time you explained yourself to someone who refused to listen, you were betraying your own sense of worth. You were telling yourself that your peace was worth less than their validation. But silence, real, grounded silence, says something else entirely. It says, I trust myself enough to walk away from what doesn't value me. That's the moment. The healing begins. Not when she comes back. Not when she finally gives you the words you waited for. But when you stop needing them. You begin to realize that closure doesn't come from someone else's apology. It comes from your decision to stop needing it. You see how much of your energy was spent trying to prove yourself to someone who didn't even see the effort? And when you go quiet, when you sit in that space without needing to fill it, You realize how much noise you were carrying just to feel close to someone who is emotionally far away. It's not weakness that keeps. Men stuck, it's the fear of letting go. The fear that if you stop reaching, the connection will die. But what you learn in the silence is this. If something dies because you stopped overextending, it was never real to begin with. And that realization doesn't just free you, it builds you. Strengthens the part of you that no longer confuses love with effort, that no longer mistakes consistency for connection. In that stillness, you don't just survive, you start to return to yourself, and that's where real strength is born. Asterisk, she thought you'd wait, that you'd linger in the background, emotionally anchored to a story that no longer served you. She assumed that even in her silence, her distance, her inconsistency, you'd be there. Maybe not physically, but emotionally still available, still hoping, still reacting. She believed you'd hold that space for her return. But you didn't. You disappeared, not loudly, not spitefully, but completely. And that shook something in her. Because now, the fantasy begins to crack. She starts revisiting the moments she once dismissed. The way you used to listen without interrupting, the way your energy felt like calm in the middle of a storm, the way you gave without keeping score. And suddenly, those things she took for granted begin to echo louder than she expected. Because now, she can't find them. You're not where she left you. And the version of you that once tolerated confusion and mixed signals, he's gone. What's left is the undeniable reality that you no longer fit into the fantasy she built. You're not waiting in limbo. You're not tolerating emotional scraps. That breaks the illusion. Because for her, you were always supposed to be there, to be safe, forgiving, constant. But your silence says otherwise now. It says you've reclaimed your power by removing yourself from the role of emotional caretaker, and that shift hits harder than any argument ever could, because now she has to face what you brought to her life, not the romantic moments or physical presence, but the emotional security, the masculine calm, the certainty she'd never found elsewhere. And when she realizes she can't access that anymore, she starts to understand, maybe for the first time, what she lost. Not because you walked away out of anger, because you finally chose yourself. Asterisk, some people only recognize value in absence. While you were there, consistent, loyal, emotionally available, she may have mistaken your presence for something ordinary. She may have believed that no matter how far she pulled back, you'd always come closer. That no matter how cold she became, you'd continue to offer warmth. But your silence changed everything. Not in a loud or aggressive way, but in the still, undeniable way that speaks to a man who's finally done proving himself. And that kind of silence doesn't just echo, it transforms. Now she feels it. The void where your energy used to be. The gap left behind by your absence isn't just empty space, it's a mirror, forcing her to confront everything she took for granted. The calm you brought, the emotional grounding, the way you handled conflict without chaos, these weren't common traits. They were a reflection of the man you had become. And now that you're no longer around to offer that presence, she sees the difference. Because others might give her attention, but they can't give her peace. Others might entertain her, but they can't make her feel safe. And here's the truth, you're not gone to punish her. You're gone because you finally understood something. The cost of staying was your self-respect. You realized that love shouldn't feel like chasing, proving, or fixing. It should feel like clarity, not confusion. So you chose to evolve instead of wait. And in doing so, you became the man who no longer needs closure, no longer seeks validation, and no longer confuses silence with weakness. You now see that your peace is your power, and not everyone deserves access to it. Let her sit with the silence. Let her wrestle with her decisions. While she looks back, you keep walking forward.